At 1:43 a.m. local time, somewhere in the northern Arabian Sea, a U.S. Navy destroyer moves through the darkness with almost no visible light. No bright deck lamps, no unnecessary voices over the circuit. Just the soft red glow inside the Combat Information Center and the steady mechanical rhythm of a ship that knows exactly where it is, even when the ocean around it has disappeared into blackness. On the sonar station, one operator leans closer to his screen. A faint sound appears. For 2 seconds, it is there. Then it is gone. It is not the signature of a merchant vessel. It is not marine life. It is not random background noise. It sounds controlled, mechanical, intentional. The operator adjusts the gain and waits. Then it returns. Same bearing, different range. This time, the trace is cleaner. A narrow acoustic line slipping beneath the thermal layer, right where cold and warm water divide the sea into invisible walls. Down there, sound bends strangely. It can hide a submarine from anyone who is not listening carefully enough. On the bridge, the officer of the deck keeps his eyes forward. The sea is calm. The wind is steady. Visibility is almost nothing beyond the ship's own shadow. On the surface, everything looks normal. Below the surface, everything has changed. CIC, sonar, possible submerged contact, bearing 086. The report is calm, flat, professional. Inside CIC, heads turn, but nobody rushes. That is how real danger arrives on a warship. Not with noise, not with panic. Just a single line of sound and a headset in the middle of the night. The tactical action officer steps closer to the display. Classify. Too early, the sonar operator says. Contact is intermittent, slow machinery signature. Could be diesel-electric. Could be. The phrase hangs in the room for less than a second. Then another operator stiffens. Second transient, new bearing, port quarter. Not crossing, not random, not surface traffic. 2 possible submerged contacts, 2 different bearings, both below the layer, both faint enough to stay hidden from anyone careless, both moving in water where nothing should be that close to a U.S. warship without being known, logged, and understood. The TAO keeps his voice low. Rebuild the picture, passive only, no active. I want trend lines. Across the room, watchstanders begin feeding the contacts into the undersea plot. Bearings, timestamps, estimated movement. Nobody says more than necessary now. The air in CIC changes. It feels tighter, heavier. On the bridge, the captain arrives without fanfare. He does not need to ask what is happening. He reads it in the posture of the watch team before anyone speaks. Captain on the bridge. The officer of the deck gives the update. Possible submerged contact detected by sonar, sir. Now tracking 2 intermittent contacts. The captain looks out through the darkened bridge window. There is nothing to see except his own ship cutting through black water. Then he turns toward the sound-powered circuit. CIC, Captain. Confirmed? Intermittent, but trending, Captain. We are evaluating. That is enough. No alarms, no shouting, no dramatic movement, just the first invisible tightening of the ship. Set enhanced undersea watch, the captain says. Keep emissions controlled. Prepare maneuvering options. Down in sonar, the first contact sharpens for a moment. Blade count unresolved. Machinery noise low. Disciplined. Whoever is down there is moving carefully. The second contact appears 12 seconds later. Different acoustic fingerprint. Similar behavior. That matters. 1 submarine can be shadowing. 2 submarines can be shaping geometry. The undersea plot begins to show something more serious than simple proximity. The starboard contact is not merely paralleling the destroyer. It is angling inward in small, patient corrections. The portside contact is wider and slower, but moving just enough to suggest coordination, not coincidence. The sonar supervisor studies the board. Sir, they may be shaping. The TAO looks up. Say again. They are not just transiting through. Bearings indicate both contacts are adjusting to us. The room becomes even quieter. A surface ship can face what it can see. Aircraft, surface craft, visible threats on radar. But submarines are different. They let the ocean hide half the game. They operate below the horizon, below the light, below the comfort of certainty. And at 1:49 a.m., this U.S. destroyer may have 2 of them moving into position at once. The captain is now in CIC, hands behind his back, voice controlled. Assess likely intent. The TAO answers carefully. Unknown at this time, sir, but the movement is not consistent with innocent passage. Nationality not confirmed. The captain nods once. Assume they are professional. Assume they are coordinated. Do not assume they made a mistake. Aye, sir. On sonar, the operator catches the first truly clean slice of sound all night. A low mechanical whine, followed by a brief rhythmic pulse. Controlled, compact. Enough to make the back of his neck tighten. He looks at the supervisor. Sir, that is not civilian. Before the supervisor can answer, the second contact tightens its bearing again. The plot updates. One contact is drawing toward the starboard side. The other is creeping ahead of the ship's projected track. This is not just a shadow. This is a setup. The TAO stares at the geometry for one hard second, then says the words every surface sailor understands immediately. They are building a box. No one in CIC moves fast. They move correctly. Course recommendations appear. The aviation detachment is quietly notified. The flight deck crew is told to prepare for possible helicopter operations. Sonar keeps listening. The plot keeps refining. The bridge holds steady for now. Outside, the sea remains black and indifferent. Inside, the ship knows something is below. Two things, and both are getting closer. At 1:52 a.m., the sonar operator leans into his headset without taking his eyes off the trace. CIC sonar. Both contacts just closed again. Recommend immediate threat reevaluation. The captain looks at the updated geometry, then at the TAO. No fear, no drama, just decision. In the cold red light of CIC, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. They are not passing. They are setting up. At 1:52 a.m., the undersea plot updates again. Two submerged contacts, two separate bearings, both tightening. The starboard contact is no longer drifting in and out by chance. Its movement now shows a pattern. Short corrections, controlled speed, deliberate angle changes. Every move designed to remain difficult to classify while still closing distance. The second contact, wider off the port side, is doing something even more serious. It is not rushing in, it is pacing. Holding back just enough to shape the space ahead of the ship. That is when the U.S. destroyer stops treating the contacts as suspicious and begins treating them as a coordinated undersea problem. The TAO studies the geometry for 3 silent seconds. Update closest point of approach. A watchstander answers immediately. If current trends hold, starboard contact passes inside dangerous bearing. Port contact moves ahead of track in under 9 minutes. The TAO does not look away from the screen. So one applies pressure, the other closes the gate. Nobody argues. On the bridge, the captain receives the update through the sound-powered circuit. He stands in darkness, one hand resting lightly on the chart table, eyes fixed forward into a sea that reveals nothing. Helm, come right 5 degrees. Aye, sir, right 5 degrees. The ship begins a subtle turn, not enough to advertise alarm, enough to test the contacts. Down in sonar, the reaction is immediate. So starboard contact adjusting. That matters more than anything. A whale does not do that. Random undersea movement does not mirror a course change in the middle of the night. The second contact responds 20 seconds later. Smaller correction, slower, but just as deliberate. The captain hears the report and gives no visible reaction. But the ship has its answer now. They are being tracked. Inside CIC, the sonar team begins pulling every thread they have. Machinery rhythm, shaft noise, harmonics, transient sounds. The first contact carries the soft, disciplined acoustic profile of a diesel-electric submarine running carefully on battery or under highly controlled power. The second is similar but not identical. Slight variation in tonal spacing, different enough to suggest 2 separate boats, similar enough to suggest the same family, the same doctrine, the same mission. The sonar supervisor makes the call. Probable military, probable submarine contacts, 2 units. Nationality. The TAO asks. Not firm. Profile is consistent with regional diesel boats. That is as far as he goes. No speculation, no dramatic guesswork, just what the ocean is giving back. At 1:55 a.m., the captain enters CIC. Everyone feels it before the report sharpens. Captain, both contacts are maneuvering in response to own ship movements. Assessment is coordinated submerged shadowing, possibly positioning for offensive geometry. The captain studies the screen. Red-lit faces. Quiet voices. Bearing lines converging into a shape no surface warfare officer mistakes for harmless traffic. Launch recommendation? The aviation detachment officer is already on circuit. Helicopter can be turning in under 3 minutes. The captain answers immediately. Make it happen. Above them on the flight deck, the ship remains nearly blacked out. Only filtered deck lighting cuts through the darkness. Sailors move low and fast around the MH-60R Seahawk, dim wands, quiet hand signals. Voices swallowed by the growing rotor wash. As the aircraft comes alive, the blades begin to turn. The helicopter is not launching into a visible battlefield. It is launching into absence. Empty black water. No horizon. No target in sight. Only coordinates, bearings, and the knowledge that somewhere below the surface, 2 submarines are working into position. Back in CIC, the ship makes a second maneuver. Helm steady on new course. Engines up 5 knots. The destroyer surges forward. The contacts react. The starboard submarine cuts inward slightly, trying to preserve its relative angle. The portside boat slows just enough to stay ahead of the U.S. ship's projected path rather than cross behind it. It is patient, professional. The Tau says it flatly. They are not just following, they are solving. That is the moment the room hardens, because a submarine solving geometry is not simply observing, it is building options. At 1:58 a.m., the Seahawk lifts off. The deck crew disappears below as the helicopter noses out over the water and vanishes almost immediately into the night. Inside the aircraft, 2 pilots and a sensor operator are already connected to the ship's tactical picture. They do not need to see the submarines. They need to help trap them acoustically. Sonobuoys are ready. Dipping sonar checklist complete. Defensive systems monitored. The mission for now is localization, not escalation. In CIC, a new bearing update flashes. The portside contact has edged farther ahead of the ship's track than before. The captain sees it instantly. If the destroyer continues on its current line, it risks sailing toward a submarine that is no longer just trying to remain hidden. It is trying to control the front of the encounter. Recommend further course change, the navigator says. The captain nods once. Do it. The ship alters again, sharper this time. Sonar listens. Then comes a brief spike in mechanical noise from the forward contact. A tiny burst of speed, then silence. Not panic. Repositioning. The operator looks up from the stack. He is trying to recover the angle. The captain turns slightly toward the TAO. That confirms intent. Aye, sir. Now the destroyer understands the shape of the problem. One submarine is pressing from the side to force decisions. The other is trying to cut in front, where a surface ship's path becomes predictable and the underwater solution becomes cleaner. A surface ship at night can live with uncertainty. It cannot live with 2 submarines building a box around it. At 2:01 a.m., the undersea plot redraws again. The starboard contact is now inside a range bracket no one in CIC likes. The forward contact has shifted into a position that no longer looks like shadowing. It looks like interception. Then sonar reports the line that changes the tone of the entire ship. Contact Alpha now in dangerously favorable bearing. Recommend assume defensive posture. The captain does not hesitate. Very well, he says, voice calm and almost quiet. Now we assume defensive posture. The words do not echo in CIC, they settle into it. For one beat, no one speaks. Then the room moves. Not fast, not loudly, correctly. The undersea plot is no longer a question mark. It is a tactical problem with 2 hostile-looking answers. One submarine is pressing from starboard, holding a bearing that threatens to turn the U.S. destroyer into a predictable target. The second has drifted ahead of the projected track, shaping the front of the battlespace like a gate waiting to close. A few minutes ago, the destroyer was trying to understand the contacts. Now it is trying to break their geometry. Above the water, the MH-60R Seahawk races into darkness, rotors cutting through humid night air, nose pitched low over a sea that looks like black glass. Inside the cockpit, the crew is already working from the same tactical picture, feeding the ship below. Bearings, trend lines, probable intercept zones. The pilot keeps his eyes outside. The sensor operator keeps his eyes on the mission. Stand by. First buoy pattern. Back in CIC, the captain leans over the undersea display. I want localization. Force them to react. Aye, sir. The Seahawk reaches the first predicted box and begins the pattern. One sonobuoy drops cleanly into the dark, then another, then a third. Each one is placed to catch movement beneath the thermal layer. Small splashes vanish instantly behind the aircraft, but the sensors go live the moment they hit the water, listening into places the ship cannot fully hear from its own position. On the destroyer, the sonar team begins receiving new data. Weak at first, then better. A flicker of sound from Contact Bravo, the forward boat, machinery noise, brief cavitation, just enough to prove the submarine has shifted depth or changed speed to recover position after the destroyer's last turn. The TAO sees the update. He felt the move. That matters. The U.S. destroyer does not need the submarines to lose control, it only needs them to keep adjusting. Every adjustment leaves a fingerprint, a new bearing, a momentary noise spike, a clue to depth, course, and intent. The destroyer comes left again, sharper this time. Not wild, not desperate, controlled, deliberate, measured in degrees and seconds. The kind of maneuver that says the captain is not trying to run. He is redrawing the geometry. Sonar calls it instantly. Starboard contact correcting. Forward contact slowing, holding, now moving again. The picture sharpens. One submarine is trying to preserve pressure off the ship's flank. The other is trying not to lose the forward position it spent the last 10 minutes building. Together, they are still dangerous. But now they are reacting instead of dictating. That is the shift. At 2:04 a.m., the Seahawk drops its second pattern farther ahead and lower on the destroyer's new axis of advance. This time, the sensor operator gets a cleaner return. There, possible submerged contact crossing left to right, deeper than expected. That is contact Bravo. The forward submarine has dropped harder beneath the layer, trying to use colder water to bend sound, shrink its acoustic profile, and disappear just long enough to keep position. It is a smart move, a professional one, but it also means something else. It means Bravo knows it has been noticed. Inside CIC, the air gets tighter. Bravo is defensive, the TAO says. He is trying to stay in the game without exposing himself. The captain does not answer right away. He watches the bearing lines update one more time, then turns to sonar. What about Alpha? The sonar supervisor studies his trace. Still cleaner than Bravo, Captain. Shallower, more disciplined, but he is working harder now. Then Alpha makes a mistake. Not a big one. Not dramatic. Just a short burst of propulsion noise, barely 2 seconds long. A little too much throttle. A little too much urgency. Maybe the submarine commander realizes the destroyer is sliding out of his preferred arc. Maybe he thinks he still has time to recover it. Either way, the Seahawk hears it. The ship hears it. And suddenly, Alpha's box gets smaller. Alpha localized tighter. The sensor operator reports from the helicopter. Recommend aggressive prosecution pattern. That recommendation changes the mood instantly. The destroyer is no longer simply avoiding a trap. It is building pressure of its own. Approved, the captain says. The Seahawk banks and turns back in, flying a tighter curve over Alpha's probable track. Another sonobuoy drops, then another. Their overlapping coverage begins to stitch together the submarine's hiding space like a net being pulled across a dark opening. Below, Alpha shifts again. This time, the acoustic trace comes with more flow noise, more urgency. He is moving, the TAO says, tapping the undersea plot once. He is losing patience or losing room. The destroyer increases speed again, enough to complicate any underwater solution that depends on steady course and predictable motion. Countermeasure systems are ready, not used yet, just ready. Everyone understands the next minutes may decide whether this remains a pressure game or becomes something much more serious. At 2:08 a.m., Bravo tries one last correction ahead of the ship's track. It almost works. Then the Seahawk's buoy field catches him. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough. Now both submarines are in the tactical picture at the same time. Alpha off the flank, pressured and getting louder. Bravo ahead, deeper and more cautious, but no longer invisible. The two-boat squeeze that looked so dangerous 20 minutes ago is beginning to distort under the weight of American coordination. Bridge, CIC, sonar, aviation. This is what the U.S. Navy does better than almost anyone at sea. Not noise, not bravado. Integration. Alpha turns first. A real turn. Not drift, not trimming. A genuine change in intent. The sonar operator hears the stern swing. Water moves differently over metal. Machinery load shifts. The bearing begins to open. He is breaking out, the operator says. But Bravo does not. Not yet. Bravo holds too long. Long enough for everyone in CIC to understand that one submarine has decided distance is the smarter choice, while the other still believes it can salvage the angle. The captain looks at the forward contact line on the display. He does not blink. One is leaving, he says. The TAO nods once, and one is still trying. Then the sensor operator in the Seahawk hears something through the buoy field that freezes every eye on the tactical picture. A metallic shift. Brief, distinct, internal. Not propulsion, not random. The report comes in flat and cold. Possible transient from Bravo consistent with internal system activity. Nobody in CIC breathes deeper. Nobody leans back. The whole ship seems to narrow onto that one line. And in that moment, the night stops being a shadow game. At 2:08 a.m., the report lands in CIC like a steel weight. No one says what everyone is thinking. They do not need to. On a warship, certain sounds have only a few possible meanings, and none of them are comforting when they come from a submarine already positioned ahead of your track. The captain's voice stays level. Execute evasive profile. The response is immediate. On the bridge, the helmsman throws the ship into a hard turn. Not reckless, precise. Engines answer a second later, driving more power into the screws as the destroyer gains speed and changes aspect at the same time. The goal is simple. Break the picture, spoil the angle, force the submarine to solve the entire problem again while under pressure. Below in CIC, the undersea plot starts moving fast. Bravo is still ahead, deeper than before, trying to hold the front of the battle space where a surface ship's path becomes most predictable. Alpha, the starboard boat that had begun to peel away, is now opening farther and farther. Whatever confidence existed in the two-submarine squeeze is falling apart. Bravo is on its own now, and that makes it more serious. A single submarine commander who thinks the window is closing can become more assertive, not less. Decoy package standby. The TAO orders. The launcher crews are already ready. The destroyer is built for this kind of moment, not because it wants it, but because it expects it. Every action has a counteraction. Every geometry has a way to be broken. At night in black water, against a diesel boat that wants one clean solution, survival belongs to the ship that can think while moving. The MH-60R Seahawk swings back over Bravo's probable track, now fully committed to prosecution. No more wide passive shaping. No more gentle localization. The helicopter tightens its orbit and begins building a direct acoustic cage. Buoy data stacked on top of buoy data. Inside the aircraft, the sensor operator hears Bravo more clearly than at any point in the night. He is deeper, but not calm. There is more flow noise now, more load in the machinery, the sound of a boat trying to preserve its solution while the target refuses to stay where it should. On the destroyer, sonar confirms it. Bravo bearing shifting rapidly. He is correcting for our turn. The captain does not take his eyes off the plot. He wants the angle back. Yes, sir. And there it is. The truth of the whole encounter. Bravo is not leaving. Bravo is not observing. Bravo is fighting the geometry, which means the U.S. destroyer was right to shift posture. At 2:10 a.m., the Seahawk crew drops another tight buoy string directly across Bravo's likely path. The pattern is not random. It is a wall. If the submarine pushes through, it becomes louder. If it dives deeper, it risks losing position. If it turns away, the opportunity disappears. For the first time all night, the Americans are not just reacting. They are pressing back. Contact Bravo, increasing speed, the helicopter reports. That is the mistake. Brief, measurable, enough. The acoustic signature blooms slightly across the buoy field, like a hidden shape stepping too close to a floodlight. It is still not a perfect picture. Undersea warfare almost never is. But it is enough to narrow the box one more time. The TAO points to the plot. He is committing. The destroyer leans into another course change. This one is designed to do two things at once. Move the ship off the line Bravo has been trying to hold and make any underwater solution go stale. Course, speed, aspect, noise profile. Everything changes together. That is how you survive a submarine that is close to getting the answer it wants. On the dark flight deck, launch crews secure gear and brace against the wash from the helicopter overhead. Inside CIC, the only light is red and the only sound is information. Bravo now offset from previous bearing. Not enough. Alpha continuing to withdraw. Forget Alpha, the captain says. Stay on Bravo. His voice cuts through the room without rising. No drama, no wasted energy, just focus. Every system on the ship narrows toward the one submarine still trying to turn the night in its favor. Then sonar picks up another transient. Shorter this time, sharper. A metallic movement inside Bravo's hull, followed almost immediately by a burst of propulsion correction. The room goes completely still for half a second. The TAO speaks first. He is trying to finalize. The captain answers at once. Challenge him. That order moves through the ship in seconds. The destroyer's undersea warfare team shifts from pure passive tracking into deliberate pressure, tactical signaling, direct acoustic challenge. A message sent into the water, not with words, but with certainty. You have been found. You are being tracked. Your margin is gone. The effect is immediate. Bravo breaks. Not smoothly, not gracefully, but unmistakably. The submarine yaws hard beneath the layer, abandoning the line it had been trying to hold ahead of the destroyer's bow. The acoustic picture flares with turn noise and turbulence. Water rushes over hull and control surfaces. Machinery strain rises. The geometry that looked so dangerous 2 minutes earlier begins to tear apart in real time. He is turning away, the helicopter operator calls. Confirming, sonar says. Bravo opening bearing rapidly. That is the moment the box collapses. The destroyer is no longer sailing into a prepared intercept line. The submarine is now trying to get clear of an American ship, an American helicopter, and an American acoustic net that have taken the dark water away from it piece by piece. But the pressure does not stop. The Seahawk stays overhead. The destroyer keeps maneuvering. No one assumes the danger is over just because Bravo blinked first. At 2:13 a.m., Alpha is effectively gone from the immediate picture. Its bearing has widened into irrelevance. Bravo remains the only real concern. And now even that concern is changing shape. No longer the one shaping the encounter, not fully cornered, but close enough to feel the pressure. The Tau watches the updated plot redraw itself. Minutes ago, 2 submarines had nearly boxed in a U.S. destroyer at night. Now one is leaving, and the other has just been forced out of position. The captain looks at Bravo's new line and speaks without emotion. We are clear of his solution. No one celebrates, because they all see the next truth at the same time. The Americans survived the box. Now they are building one of their own. At 2:13 a.m., the geometry on the screen no longer belongs to the submarines. For the first time since the first faint transient was heard below the thermal layer, the U.S. destroyer is no longer inside someone else's plan. Bravo, the forward submarine that had nearly built a solution across the bow, is now opening bearing fast. Alpha, the boat that had tried to hold pressure off the starboard side, is fading wider into the dark, no longer part of the immediate encounter. The 2 submarine squeeze is over. But no one in CIC relaxes, because submarines do some of their most dangerous work in the seconds after people start believing the worst has passed. Maintain prosecution, the captain says. Aye, sir. The destroyer holds its speed. Not fleeing, not chasing blindly. Just driving forward with purpose, while every system stays locked on the last submarine still inside the tactical box. Above, the MH-60R Seahawk keeps circling over Bravo's probable path, feeding back buoy data that now tells a very different story than it did only minutes earlier. More flow noise, more turn noise, more urgency. Bravo is no longer shaping the situation, it is trying to escape from one. In the helicopter, the sensor operator adjusts his headset and listens again. The acoustic picture is still imperfect, it always is. But it is good enough to hear a commander under pressure. A boat changing depth, altering course, pushing propulsion just a little too hard for stealth. Every correction solves one problem and creates another. Every attempt to disappear leaves another acoustic scar in the water. On the destroyer, sonar updates the track. Bravo continuing to withdraw, bearing widening, depth variable. The TAO studies the movement. He is trying to break contact through the layer. The captain nods once. Do not let him do it clean. That does not mean recklessness. It means pressure, constant, professional, disciplined. The kind that convinces a submarine commander he is one poor decision away from becoming the center of a full American undersea pattern in open water. At 2:15 a.m., the Seahawk pushes farther ahead of Bravo's escape line and drops another pair of sonobuoys. The spacing is tight and intentional. Not to escalate, to deny comfort, to deny uncertainty, to deny the submarine the one thing it needs most right now, a quiet seam in the ocean to slip through. Bravo turns again. The helicopter hears it instantly. The ship hears it a second later. He rejected the gap, the sensor operator says. Exactly, because he no longer trusts the water in front of him. That is how control works beneath the surface. Not always through impact, not always through visible force. Sometimes it is done by narrowing every safe choice until the other side has to choose the least costly exit. Alpha is now little more than a fading problem on the outer plot. Whether its commander lost confidence, lost position, or simply realized the Americans had broken the setup too early, it no longer matters. That submarine is gone from the immediate action. Bravo is not. Bravo is still in it, still trying to survive the consequences of holding too long. At 2:17 a.m., the destroyer makes one more measured course adjustment. Not to chase the submarine directly, but to keep the tactical picture honest and prevent any sudden re-entry into favorable bearing. The captain is not trying to create a dramatic victory. He is making sure the night ends with his ship intact, his crew safe, and the other side forced to remember exactly why U.S. Navy warships are so hard to surprise. The bridge stays dark. CIC stays cold. The sea outside remains black and unreadable. But beneath that surface, the hierarchy is no longer in doubt. Bravo speed decreasing, sonar reports. That means the submarine commander has accepted the truth. The opportunity is gone. The moment is gone. And the Americans are still there. A few seconds later, the Seahawk crew catches another brief but telling change in the buoy field. Bravo is dropping deeper, angling away, no longer trying to preserve any forward position at all. This is not repositioning. This is disengagement. The TAO lets the update settle before he says it. He is done. The captain does not answer immediately. He waits for confirmation. Another bearing update, another depth estimate, another widening line on the screen. Then he gives the order. Continue track. No overextension. Hold pressure until he clears. That is pure U.S. Navy. No chest thumping, no wasted aggression. The objective was never noise. It was control. And control has now been taken back completely. At 2:21 a.m., Bravo's acoustic profile weakens as it moves deeper and farther from the buoy field. Not vanished, just no longer useful as an immediate concern. The Seahawk remains overhead long enough to make sure the withdrawal is real. The destroyer maintains readiness long enough to make sure this is not a trick. Only when both tracks, Alpha and Bravo, have widened beyond the danger envelope does the room inside CIC begin to breathe again. No cheering, no applause, just small movements. A jaw unclenching, a headset being adjusted, a watchstander taking his first full breath in several minutes. The captain looks once more at the now open geometry on the screen. No box, no intercept line, no coordinated pressure. Just two retreating submarines fading back into the dark water they had tried to control. Minutes earlier, they had moved in under darkness, believing the night would hide them. Instead, the night exposed them. The destroyer holds course. The Seahawk turns back toward the ship. The Arabian Sea swallows the evidence the way oceans always do. No dramatic visual for a headline, no bright flash in the distance. No wreckage on the surface, just a U.S. warship still moving forward, and two submarines disappearing into the deep with nothing to show for the risk they took. That is how nights like this are won. Not with panic, not with noise, with discipline, integration, pressure, timing. And somewhere below the black water, two submarine commanders now understand the same thing. They thought darkness would make the U.S. destroyer vulnerable. Instead, it made the U.S. Navy impossible to ignore.